Thanks for joining us for another edition of Real Estate Roundtable. And today we're joined by Jeff Lichtenstein, of course, as usual, the owner of Echo Properties. Hey, Jeff. And
Hey, good morning.
how are you? And we're joined with the rental expert, the rental king. We have many names for this man, the Dean of Mean, Will Dean. And we're going to learn about today the rental market in this COVID world that we're living in. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you take it away.
So, Will, tell us a little bit about your background, just so everybody knows. You've been here at Echo, I think 7 years now. Do approximately 100, rentals a year. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. Moved down to Florida for school in 2005. Graduated, and when I graduated, I thought it would be a great idea to get into real estate really in the middle of the recession, and I built my business through rentals from the ground up. One seasonal, annual, anything rental related. I dove head first into interested, and it's really changed quite a bit in the last 10 years since 2010, where rentals were and where rentals are now is a very different place.
One of the things that Will does really well is that he does so many rentals that he knows it, like the back of his hand. And a lot of people think, well, I'm going to put my home on the market with, real estate agent I use to buy or sell my home. And that agent is really not used to rental contracts. They may do 1 or 2 or 3 rentals a year, and they're not paying attention to it. They don't know how to market it. They don't know how to even read the contract. And the contract is in some ways harder than a residential sale, contract. So Will is in this rhythm of doing rental after rental after rental, and his eye is trained on knowing what to look for, and he knows the inventory, extremely well. Will, how has everything changed since COVID in the rental world? What are the significant changes?
I think it speeded things up in some ways, in that people need to make a quicker decision. There's been more demand for rentals, both people living locally needing to relocate, but also people from the Northeast, even the Midwest, which you don't get as much traditionally, looking for a second home, really a getaway home, something that they're maybe going to rent for the year, but really only going to use here and there, or they live in a high rise in New York or Chicago, and then they want to have something that they can get away to. So demand's definitely increased. And on that note, supply has decreased, with people being fearful about people walking around in their homes. So I think one thing that's changed and become more important, and something that I've always focused on, and that has been the premise of what I do, is qualifying. And qualifying prior to the showing has become more important. People need to make sure that the right type of tenant is looking at the home, and that they're qualified, and that they're able to pay the rent. Get calls every day from people who want to look at a property that's way above their budget, and I tell them, I want a lot of things. I want a Ferrari and I want a condo on the beach, but not realistic. So you've got to be realistic. You can look at things that you can afford, but if you're making $6,000 a month, it's probably not a good idea to be looking at a rental that's $4,000 a month. So that's become more important. You don't want to set up an in-person showing with someone who's not qualified. Not only are you wasting your time, but now with the pandemic, you're risking your health. So
have the percentage of rentals gone up, where people are looking at rentals and just making the decision on an online basis?
Yes, and solely FaceTime, Skype. They don't want in-person showings. I've done more rentals that way than before, but it's a double-edged sword, because it's great that they're not risking their health and going out and about, but then they haven't seen the home themselves. Every home has quirks. So something I often say is rentals are like contractual dating. You sign a lease, you're gonna have to work with each other for the year, whether you like each other or not. So if the door squeaks when you open it, and that's something that bothers you, landlord might not fix it and really doesn't need to. If that's something that's going to bother you, it's something you want to know from the get-go. Is there a funny smell, and you have a strong smell, and that's going to drive you nuts. So things like that you can't get from a FaceTime tour or a Zoom tour.
So you're stuck in that relationship for a year.
In-person showing are important. Well, it's at least 1 year. So you know, whether you like each other or not, it's not like you can just cut ties and walk out.
Are you getting more people trying the area out or want to try the area out for a year?
A lot more people are looking to rent for the year. The seasonal rental supply has decreased quite a bit. A lot of the rentals that typically rent January, February, March, and April have been scooped up by annual renters because they don't know where they're going to be then. Who knows if there'll be travel restrictions, or we don't know what will be the case then. So a lot of the landlords who had vacancy and an overwhelming number of people wanting to lease for the year have switched the rental cycle, which from a cash flow standpoint is better and more consistent. But
are we going to see in come January, where we typically get all these renters coming down, are we going to see less renters, or is there going to be people going stir crazy and wanting to get away from the winter as the cold is coming and not wanting to be in that type of environment? And I say that because we saw traveling, whether it's to Colorado or to North Carolina, first go down like crazy, and then there's these spikes where you can't even get anything. You think the same thing's going to happen here?
I think that you're going to see less seasonal renters, but those seasonal renters, when I say seasonal renter, I mean December, January, February, March, or April. They're already here. They have already rented something for the year. I had people that never left. They rented for the season and then the off season, and then they said we're just going to rent for the year. So those people, a lot of them are already here, and the seasonal rentals for 3 and 4 months are significant. The inventory is significantly less. There's virtually nothing available. And
for even renting for January, February, March?
You hear that every year, but those landlords have taken their home off that cycle or that type of rental schedule and just put somebody in there for a longer term. Now
is there a bunch, we see it, I know, in the sales side for sure. Are you seeing the same thing in the rental side, where there's I think right now a large pent up demand from people from Chicago or New York or Philadelphia, or especially Canada, who haven't come down here and who want to get down here but haven't because of traveling issues, but are buyers later on?
I think yes. I think that's true. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of misinformation. I get calls every day asking if there's restrictions. Can you leave your house? Some people watch news that is not giving them even close to accurate information. So a lot of misinformation. So I think that there's going to be people that are sitting on the sidelines, and there's definitely pent up demand. But
what's going to happen? What's going to happen in, do you see this happening probably closer to November, December, like after the election, where people then all of a sudden decide let's go get a place in Florida for the winter?
I think that, yes. I think that every election, the uncertainty, what's going to happen, who wins, is it going to drastically change the world, or we're still going to be here tomorrow, the day after? But there's a lot of demand. There's not a lot of great inventory. A lot of the homes are older. People don't rent, then don't want to rent homes that are just in the past, and then there's maintenance issues that come up.
Well, and some people don't understand, in the northern Palm Beaches, if you go to West Palm Beach up to the Jupiter to Quest area, there's new construction, but a lot of it's built out, so we're not nearly at the same scale. There hasn't been a new golf club community that started in over a decade. Frenchman's Reserve and Jupiter Country Club started before 2010, so we had all that excess supply before, but we don't. Inventory is down 3-4 times the amount that it was in 2005. We just don't have those spec homes or any of that stuff, and we don't have the land to build them on.
And that's the thing I think people really need to listen to and understand is that we're almost built out. There are little pockets here and there that'll come up, but there's not this big wave of inventory that's going to be dumped on the market that's going to suppress values and rental rate. People are moving here every day and they're eating up inventory, but there's not the new supply to replace it. So it's going to continue to get more and more competitive. And if you're looking at a rental and you like it, there's chances are that there's 10 other people behind you that want it just as bad, if not more. So when you go to apply to that rental that's updated and new and it has everything you like, it's competitive. And you're basically at a job interview and you have to stand out and be better than the other 10 people, because chances are, you know, they're just as concerned and they want to lock it in as well. It's competitive. And
how fast do you have to lock it in? Do you have to go, are you not able to see the place basically?
Well, if you like it, you need to have somebody that you know, like, and trust. Hopefully that's a real estate agent, but also a family member or friend that's going to go in and look at it and make sure there's no funny smells and take the, take the anxiety out of it. Make sure that they give it the thumbs up and then lock it up right away, because the chances are if you don't, someone else will. It's a very, very tight inventory. And like I said, if you like something and it's new, updated, chances are there's a line of 10 people. So,
and what are these, the 3 T's? Tenants, toilets, and trouble. What does that mean?
Well, triple T's are tenants, toilets, and trouble. And with rentals, you ride the rental roller coaster. You're up 1 minute, down the next. I mean, it's not all about collecting a check. You're gonna have to earn your money, whether you're paying someone to do it or you're doing it yourself. Or that toilet flapper will not last forever. So on the landlord side, this really a new industry. Airbnb, VRBO was around before, but I think Airbnb came out 2010, 2012, and it's blown up, and they've seen their first down market for a little while. But I think that's going to create a new opportunity for institutional investors to get in on vacation rentals. Marriott recently has gotten involved, and I think other larger companies will as well. And there'll be some growing pains, but it's definitely, rentals are not all about collecting a check on the landlord's side. You're gonna have to earn your money.
What when you're renting your place out, if you're doing it yourself, what are the problems that you see?
There's certain standard expectations when somebody rents their home, and there's not a rule book that's followed by all. So everyone's expectations and standards are different. So you may be used to living in a multifamily apartment community where you get in trouble if you change the light bulbs and the air filters. If you rent a single family home in a club community, there's no on-site concierge that's gonna come change the light bulbs and the air filters. And
that's Will Dean.
Don't get any ideas and call me, because I'm not helping with that either. But there's things that you have to do, and if you don't set the expectations from the beginning, and forget about the lease, I'm talking about when you first see a property, who's responsible for what? If a cockroach comes in, how's that cockroach getting out?
Well, palmetto bugs in Florida, we don't have cockroaches.
Palmetto bugs. But who's gonna take care of that? Is that a tenant responsibility? Is that a landlord responsibility? And who's the vendor to take care of it? Those things set up front ensure a smooth year or longer.
Right, and you can't. And there's certain things you can't do. Like, we knew somebody who, we talked about where they thought they were doing a good thing and clean the carpeting, and that chemical was bothersome to the owner and didn't ask permission, and you run into all sorts of, out of those. Those situations.
The problem. So it goes back to the beginning, to setting expectations, assuming it's never a good idea. And you may think, just like you said, you may think you're doing something good in your mind that it may be, and in someone else's mind that maybe you're doing harm. So setting expectations from the beginning are important. So as a tenant, if you're looking at a rental, questions you want to ask are, who's responsible for pest control? Are there any utilities included in the rent? What if what if there's a major issue, an air conditioning issue? Who do I contact? Am I responsible for a service call? Are there repairs under a certain dollar amount that I'm responsible for? Before you even think about applying, you should know these things, because then there's no surprises. Other than a birthday, most people don't like surprises, especially with their home, which is becoming more and more important, and they're spending more time every day. Pool service, lawn service, sprinkler heads. You have a home that's 3,000 square feet. You have a home that's 300 square feet. Things are going to break. It doesn't mean that they were not taken care of. It's just a day in the life of living. And if you know what you're getting, you're going to have a smooth ride. If you don't, you're not. So it's better for everyone to know what they're getting up front.
There's other subjects to cover, and I think we'll do that another time. But one subject that I do want to cover, because it's really important, is there's been this period of time where there's been no evictions going on, and you don't have to pay your rent. You have to pay your rent, but you don't have to, and you can't get evicted. What is that going to do to the market in general?
So there's been an eviction moratorium since March, and that's been extended pretty much at the 11th and a half hour every month since June, I think. And that's been extended again now until September 1st with some changes from past extensions of this eviction moratorium. I think the majority of the tenants that are not paying have had issues, or in some cases being spiteful because of landlord-tenant disagreements, but there definitely will be a wave of tenants that are in need of new housing, and landlords who are burnt out and will just want to get out. Landlords are burnout business. You're dealing with the public every day, and the more you have, the more issues that come up. And if you don't do it to scale, it's a lot. You're going to burn out. There could be.
Is there going to be, though, a bunch of displaced people that are looking for homes on the market? Is that going to increase the? If what you're saying is true, you're going to have landlords who are probably going to be looking more to sell than anything else, and you're going to have tenants who have really bad credit, or some people just don't have. They're not going to have jobs or different things like that. So
jobs, roommates are seeing that, people needing old, young, age aside, everyone needing to live with somebody and can't stand on their own 2 feet, essentially. Not necessarily due to their own fault, just due to hard times. But I think that there's going to be the court system's definitely going to get clogged. There's going to be a lot of evictions, but it's not.
Are they doing virtual courts at all right now?
I've had, for the record, 0 non-payment issues for any of my rentals because I qualify and I put the right people in. But for those who don't use me for their rental or call for advice, a number of landlords that I'm friendly with that decided to do things their own way and they're suffering the consequences, and I've hopped on a Zoom call for court, and they're not organized at all. This is going to take a while to flush out because there's very little organization. Court dates are being pushed back again and again and again. And then there's, an older demographic who doesn't know how to turn on the computer, use Zoom. They can't, their computer doesn't allow the processing. So that's going to slow things further.
Really interesting, really good stuff.
The eviction moratorium that's in effect right now is for non-payment, not for compliance-related issues. So if a tenant's having parties and going wild, they can still be evicted. The only reason for the pause on eviction is non-payment. So there's workarounds, but ultimately, I think there's going to be a wave of unhappy.
There has to be, because if you're March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and you're at 8 months of this thing plus. So it's going to be a year before it's done.
It goes deeper than just tenants not paying rent, because there's the fallout. The tenant's not paying rent, the landlord's not able to pay their mortgage, or if they own the the property outright, there's carrying costs that the landlord has that they're getting shortchanged on. So there's going to be fallout not just for tenants needing to find new homes, but landlords deferred maintenance, their vendors that they're not paying. And I think one question I get is, well, if I rent this home and the landlord stops paying their HOA dues or their club dues, what's going to happen? Am I going to be out on, request a tea time and they're going to say, sorry, sir, you need to go back home and call your landlord. He's late on his club dues. That's another question that you should ask up front, and the answer is simple.
So do you put something in? Does a renter almost need to put something in if they can in escrow in case the landlord doesn't pay their bill?
They should know these things going forward, but typically they don't, because they don't ask the questions or they don't work with someone who knows what they're doing. The answer to that question is Florida law. Around 2013, when a lot of people own rental properties and just collected the rent, didn't pay their dues, the homeowners associations are going bankrupt. Florida enacted a statute which essentially says if the landlord does not pay their dues or their HOA condo fees, the tenant has to pay the rent directly to the homeowners association, club, condo association, etc. And in turn, that's what's happened. And I've had one instance out of 1,000 or so rentals that I've done where that has happened. The landlord just basically disappeared and the tenant had to pay the rent to the homeowners associations, and they ended up carrying through the 12 months, but not a fun experience.
I had to remember in the 2010, 11, 9 market, a lot of those on both sides, you had really bad tenants and you had really bad landlords going on at the exact same time. So you really should be working with somebody like Will, and Will's as hard of a worker and as good as anybody that I've ever seen at this. But you really need to do your due diligence in checking these people out, understanding contracts. And contracts are tricky because they need to be, lawyers need to write in any change in language.
It's a big deal. People think renting, they overlook it, but if you think you have your home, it's worth $250,000 to $500,000, lower side. Would you just write somebody a check, financial advisor that, well, can you manage my money? Think about it like that. It's one of your largest assets. You want to make sure that it's protected, that you're protected. There's a significant amount of liability that goes involved. Everyone wants to sue everyone, get rich quick, especially in Florida, whocanisue.com. I mean, everyone's looking for an easy way. You want to make sure you're protected. And
I got me 2.8 million.
I mean, you can't drive 5 minutes down the highway without seeing some type of billboard.
Oh.
So
awful. There must be like 8 of them.
They have good jingles though. Their commercials have very good jingles.
Get quick, so that's an important way to look at it. Would you trust your retirement portfolio to somebody on the street? Same thing. Would you let somebody live in your home that you don't really know or haven't qualified? Same thing.
Especially here, because you're not doing it's not a 3-day, little rental. You're doing things that are for a quarterly period of time or a year.
Someone's going to pay their rent every month, and a lot of it's personality. Some people, maybe they can pay, but they feel that they shouldn't have to pay because that sink has dripped for 3 days, and in their mind, that sink dripping for 3 days is unacceptable. They're not going to pay the rent until that is fixed. And is there a statute? Does Florida law allow tenants to withhold rent for repairs? And is that a repair that qualifies? A lot of questions. So if you don't know these answers, it's your living situation. It's a big deal. And there are a lot of loops and hoops to jump through.
Right. That's why we're doing this roundtable at the beginning of the morning, not at the end of the day. So, Will, one last thing. There was some new product out there that you wanted to bring up too.
So there is some new construction and new projects that are on the line. Quite a few in Palm Beach Gardens. There's one in
I see a bunch while I'm driving around town.
there's some new rental product, but there's also a couple new concepts. One in particular, which I thought was really cool, is it's currently being built. The clubhouse is going to be done, I believe, in March, and then by next summer they're going to have occupancy. This is called
Arcadia?
Arcadia Gardens. So Arcadia Gardens is a 55 plus community in Palm Beach Gardens, just off of RC Boulevard, south of Legacy Place. What's going to differentiate them between an assisted living facility and a normal rental community is that they're going to have on-site dining, and they're not going to have a medical component. So they're not a normal apartment community. They're not an assisted living facility with care, medical care, which people like. Those one bedrooms are going to start upwards of $2,500 for 700 square feet. Dining is additional. It's essentially an a la carte, and they're going to have 220 units there, 1 and 2 bedrooms. They're going to have a full site on-site activity director. They're going to have a dog park. It's adult day camp, and you're going to be able to fill your day with a whole bunch of different things. But that's something that doesn't exist in our market, and that people are looking for from the Northeast and other cities where they live in a building that has a lot of these things. We don't have that here. We have the Landmark, which is a full service condo building where there are some rentals, not as many as there have been in the past, but there's no dining, although you can walk to Whole Foods and restaurants. It's not on site. You don't have a driver who will take you within a couple miles for errands. Arcadia Gardens is going to have all of that. So I think they hit a need on the head because people they're paying for convenience.
Right. We just put that one on in Landmark, and it rented, record price immediately.
Set a record in the building, although it's low. The prices haven't been pushed in there. But this is going to fill a need. So that's one. You have several other projects, and then there's been some talk about redevelopment of downtown at the Gardens to build up and to change some of those uses. So, something about Palm Beach Gardens is they're concerned about the density. They don't want it to become Miami, and I think they're weighing both the developer and the public and the feedback to balance both needs. But there is some higher end rentals, but these rentals are going to start at high prices. $2,500 a month, $3,500 a month for what? In 10 years, if you plan to live in an area for 5 years, renting for a year, maybe 2 is a good idea to get your feet wet, make sure you like the area, make sure everything works out. But there's people who rent forever, for 5 years, 10 years. They want the flexibility. They can buy, and at the end of the
we've been here since 2000. So in 2000, when we came here, prices, and at 20 years is a long time. We saw prices when we bought it in 2002. We rented for a year and a half, bought 2 years or a year and a half later, and then prices went up, and then they went down significantly when there was that market crash. But then they went back up, and they've almost doubled. Mm-hmm. And I think what people don't get, and then when I'm back in Chicago, when I left, prices continue to go up until 2008. They went down, not as much as here, but then they've been going down ever since. So you'll see places in the suburbs of Chicago and in the city itself. The city right now is really taking a hit, but it's because, so we were at one level. Chicago area was over here. We were here. They've kind of come down, but we're now maybe over what they are for the same piece of property. So because we don't have because of our no tax structure, because we don't have we're having tremendous growth and they don't, and we're built out at this point. There's not like just land to buy. I see that continuing on a long-term, decade by decade cycle, where our prices are going to go up both on the rental side and it's just the cost of living here is going to get pricey because we're 15 minutes to the beach and it's 70 degrees all year round.
And there's a lot of people who want to buy. I mean, I'm working with a couple that relocated back to Gardens and rented for a couple years, and ultimately they always wanted to buy, and they went under contract in Jupiter Farms, where it's a perfect fit for them. And so they've worked really, really hard for the last couple of years to put themselves in the right spot to where they can pull the trigger to buy something. And I think there's a lot of other couples like that, and families that are they're inching for something larger, for a little bit more space. Student loan debt and others debts pull people down, but it's tough to be able to make the jump. It's more than first last security, which you're going to put down to any other rental, but long term owning, if you're going to live somewhere for 5, 6, 7, 8 more years, is better. It's a better move.
Right, and you're not a vagabond moving all the time too. When they decide they want to, that's something's happened in their life and they want to change.
I get calls from tenants and landlords every day, and yesterday get a call. Landlord sends the tenant notice. They're worried about the future of the economy. They don't want to renew the lease for as long as the tenant wanted them to. So as a tenant, you have a lot less control. You may want to stay in the rental forever, but the landlord may not want that. And life throws curveballs at you every day, and so there's not as much stability as owning somewhere, and that can change. Flick of the switch.
Right. So, Will, what is your contact information if somebody needs any help in rentals or questions or needs a light bulb change?
561-602-7373 or will@echofineproperties.com.
All right. So that's going to be it for this session of Real Estate Roundtable, and we're going to have it's a doubleheader today. So we've got Ryan Brown coming up next. We're going to talk about mortgages and crazy low interest rates and other things that are happening in the mortgage market. Because what happens in the mortgage market affects everything. It affects the sale market, it affects the rental market, and all sorts of other good stuff. So for myself, Will Dean, Rob Moore, we'll see you back in a couple minutes.
All right. Thank you.